Welcome back to Forgotten Hollywood. I went and I saw Snow White with about 7 other people in the auditorium. And it wasn't the train wreck that I was actually expecting after seeing some of the other remakes. It was more like a car accident where nobody died. It was bad, but not horrific, and you just kept staring at it, wondering what just happened. First off, let me say I'm not going to go over every detail, because that would take a very, very long time, but I'm going to highlight a few things, including positives, and starting off with things that don't include spoilers. I'll let you know when I get into the spoiler section. Starting with the positives, the Queen had these rings, and when she was irritated, she would just move her fingers like this, and it would make this clicking sound. And I really liked that little subtle aspect of the character, because you don't have to see her face change. She doesn't have to say anything. She just goes like this, and you know she's mad. So it was almost like a rattlesnake rattle, just warning you of danger. And there was one joke I laughed at. I don't remember which joke it was. I just remember there was one time I laughed in the theater. That's what I've got for the positives. So let me start with the spoiler-free negatives. Now, I am going to go over creative choices and things that are in the 1937 version, but not any of the big changes that they made, like no major plot points. So to start out with, there is inconsistency. For example, it shows Snow White as a child, and she interacts with some kids. And then when she is older, it shows the big crowd of people in the village, and right in the front, predominantly, are the same kids she played with like 10 years before in the movie. Not aged. So that was a little off-putting. There's also Snow White's motto: fearless, fair, brave, and true. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on the fact that fearless and brave are kind of redundant when they're both put in the same list. But fearless Snow White faces the huntsman when he has come to kill her, just like in the 1937 movie, except she is fearless. So she doesn't shy away and get scared like the one in the 1937 version. But this is immediately followed by the run through the woods. Very famous scene in the 1937 version when the trees are grabbing at her and she's seeing eyes everywhere and seeing monsters. And they do it like that. Except the reason why that happened in the 1937 version was because Snow White was afraid. She was already freaked out by the huntsman. She's told the Queen is coming after her. She runs into the woods and she sees everything is after her. Everything is terrifying. Everything's coming to get her. The logs are actually alligators. But we also see that they are just logs, so we know this is her imagination. So the fearless Snow White, who can stand up to a man with a knife, is scared of the trees 2 minutes later. This doesn't really fit. I know why they put the scene in, because it is in the original. It's a very famous scene. But it doesn't fit with the character that they have created. Another thing that they got inconsistent that actually drove me nuts was the magic mirror. He speaks in verse when he is quoting the same lines from the original movie, but anytime he's doing new lines, they don't rhyme. It's not in verse anymore. It's more like haiku. And I'm like, what are you doing? This is not how the magic mirror talks. To have him speak in verse some of the time, and then in other times he's just talking, it's strange. Another thing was there was just too much music. Now, yes, I know it was a musical, but it seemed like every few minutes the characters were breaking into song, and the songs were long. One song was about 5 minutes long. Hi-Ho was almost 4 minutes long. And also there was one song that was broken up into 4 parts throughout the film. So it was like the song never ended. It just kept going. They would just pick it up again at different times. It was just excessive. If you count all the different parts of the songs as individuals, there were 14 songs in this movie. It's not even that long of a movie. It's under 2 hours. I love musicals. I really do. But music in a musical should advance the plot, in my opinion. And a lot of really good musicals might have 1 or 2 musical numbers that don't really fit. But it's just 1 or 2. This was like almost all of them. Which actually brings me to one song in particular just threw me out of the story so badly. And that was the Queen song. Now, I understand people like a good villain song, but not every villain needs their own song. And a character like the Queen from Snow White, she's very proud and regal and evil and just dark. So when she starts doing a Broadway number with backup dancers, seriously, there were backup singers, dancers on the stairs with her. I'm like, what am I watching? I am now in The Greatest Showman. What is this? And, but seriously, who looks at this character and says, you know what she needs? Backup dancers. It was just so weird. No. Now we are going to enter the spoiler zone. So if you don't want to get into this stuff, just stop here. And again, we are going to start with the positives. Moving on to the negatives. So one of the things about this movie that really got to me was there were some jarring transitions. The plot goes in ways you're going, wait, what? Like, Snow White comes to the dwarf's cottage, she stays the night, the next morning they're off to work, and she leaves and, like, goes off into the woods to go find someone. And I'm like, what? Are the dwarves coming back at some point, or was this all we get from them? Is whistle while you work, hi-ho, and they're off. Done. So they do actually come back, but that's after she finds the bandits, which people suspect were the dwarf replacement before pressure made them put the dwarves back into the movie. And Jonathan, the not a prince, is hit by an arrow while Snow White is being hunted by the guards. Because that happens. And he's badly hurt. They need someone to help him. So Snow White takes him and all the bandits to the dwarf's cottage and presents him to Doc. And Doc's like, I'm actually not a medical doctor. I'm a geologist. But he does his best. And then he comes out and Doc is convinced that he killed Jonathan because he is not a medical doctor. He doesn't know what he's doing. And then Jonathan comes out behind him and he's okay. And Doc was very relieved. They're very happy. Jonathan's okay. Jonathan's alive. And then, like, the clock dings or goes off. The cuckoo clock goes off. And Happy's like, do you know what time it is? And then it cuts to Grumpy going, please no. And then goes back to Happy and he suddenly has a musical instrument in his hands. And he's like, dancing time. And then not 2 seconds later, everyone is dancing and we're playing music. And I'm sitting here going, what? And again, I know why they did it. They did it so they could put in the silly song, which is the other popular scene from the original movie. But it fit as well as the scary trees in my mind. It just didn't really work. But speaking of the dwarves, there is another thing. Dopey is not a dope. He's actually highly intelligent and doesn't speak because he is scared. So of course, once you find that out, you know that at some point in the movie he is going to find his voice. He does. And it's just like, yeah. I kind of felt like with Dopey, they were sort of trying to make him on the spectrum. He wasn't as silly and as slapstick as he was in the original. He kind of started out that way a little bit, but he's more brave. He's more thoughtful and intelligent, and he notices things. Going back to the inconsistencies, there's a scene where the dwarves have a food fight, and Dopey is just, he's not participating because he's trying to protect this little firefly that he found. And he's trying to keep it safe from all the food and just hold it. And so he's not participating in the fight. And then at some point, somebody throws a bowl of some kind of oatmeal or something, and it lands on Dopey's head. And then all the other dwarves stop the food fight so that they can make fun of Dopey for having oatmeal on his head, like he put it there himself. And I'm sitting here going, you were just having a food fight and you don't know how the oatmeal got on Dopey's head? And then Dopey gets sad and he walks out so Snow White can go out and comfort him and they can have a moment. And that's why they did it, I'm sure. But it's just, it doesn't fit. It's like they wanted certain things to happen and they were gonna make them happen and they were gonna force that square peg into that round hole, even if it broke. They also had a new ending, which was both rushed and too long. Let me explain. So they wanted to have the big take back the castle scene. You know, after she wakes up from the true love's kiss, it reveals what is going on, who did that, and what they need to do. They have to take back the castle. And so she goes and leads the most ridiculous revolt I've ever seen in cinema, where all she does is just walk through the village and people just start following her and singing. It was kind of like the Rocky sequence, but boring. You know, everyone's following Rocky and running and it's pumped up and we're doing something. But for this, it was just she was walking and they were just following her and singing. That's all. Nothing else. They just walked up to the castle. There's some speeches made just through this talking. The guards lay down their arms, and the queen runs away. And she has a different fate, but I'm not even going to go into that. But it was a very long sequence for nothing happening. And it was like they wanted to have a climactic duel, but didn't have time or budget for that, so they just had them talk to each other for a while. And that was it. Most jarring to me was that I couldn't really mentally stay in Snow White because I kept getting reminded of other films and movies. One of them was Mirror, which I felt was essentially the same plot as this Snow White, but done a little bit better. And because it didn't try to take anything seriously, it was just goofy, used modern humor and stuff like that. But I felt like that was the movie they were actually going for. But then in addition to Mirror, I was sitting there going, now I feel like I'm in Tangled. Now I feel like I'm in Sleeping Beauty. Now I feel like I'm in the Aladdin remake. Now I feel like I'm in Enchanted. What's going on? Like, stay in one movie, please. In summary, the movie did actually have all the elements of Snow White. It was just mixed into a whole other story that clashed. Imagine if you were trying to make a soup and somebody said, can you make me broccoli and cheddar soup? I really want broccoli and cheddar soup. And you said, okay, I'll make that, but it's kind of boring, so I'm going to dress it up a little bit. So you get out the pot, you add beef stock, chicken, sausage, potatoes, carrots, celery, pearl onions, herbs, spices. You taste it, you think it's pretty good for a stew. And you realize, oh, I was supposed to be making broccoli and cheddar soup. So instead of starting from scratch, you just take the broccoli and the cheddar and you dump it into the stew and you mix it all up and say, hey, it has all the elements of a broccoli and cheddar soup. So this is a broccoli and cheddar soup improved. No, it's a stew mixed with broccoli and cheddar soup and trying to figure out what it is. That's more what it felt like to me. You know, the key points are there. Snow White, evil queen, poisoned apple, true love's kiss, so on. But at its core, it didn't feel like the same story. Thanks for watching. What version of Snow White is your favorite? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the bell for notifications, and I will catch up with you next time.